Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well this spring afternoon, and thank you for joining our webinar, Rethinking Handover. This session is primarily aimed at those dealing with construction handover, where we'll be discussing some of the challenges with handover today, how to rethink handover to overcome some of these challenges in today's digital world, and we'll also be sharing some real-life contractor insights. My name is Maria Hudson. I'm CMO at Zutec, and I will be your moderator and host for today. And I'm really pleased to be joined today by Toby Young, Group Technical Director at Red Construction, who has been involved in delivering projects such as the iconic Shard, and brings a wealth of experience from Red's refurbishment, mixed use and new building projects. Today, Toby is joining us to share his perspective on digital handover and how Red are thinking about it as a business. So thank you for joining, Toby. It's great to have you with us.
Pleasure.
We'll also have some of our internal experts on the call as well. So I'm joined by James Starman, Head of Account Management at Zutec, who is sat next to me. So I'll show him and he can give us a wave. Josh Frank, who is one of our senior sales guys, and then Carolina Boda, Head of our Handover Custom Operations team. And what we'll be doing is discussing a bit more about kind of typical pain points, our approach to rethinking handover, how we think about best practice. We'll also be sharing some live demos with you on the call. We'll wrap the session up with questions, but if you do have questions throughout the session, please do ask them and we'll try and get to them as we go. We like to keep it interactive. And we will then take questions at the end as well. We will be hosting polls throughout the session, so please do put your insight in. It's good for us to see how you think about handover as well, and understand your needs, because that helps us better support you as customers. And there is also a chat and Q&A message board, so you can put your questions on there as we go. Lastly, we will be recording the session, so we can distribute it afterwards for those that have joined today and those that would like the webinar on demand afterwards. So before we get into the session, I wanted to share a little bit about Zutec. Some of you on the call probably know us quite well. For those that don't, Zutec has been around for about 25 years, providing O&M creation and digital handover solutions to customers across the construction and property tech industry. We are primarily based in the UK and Ireland. Our business started with O&M delivery and building manuals. However, over the years, we've grown the business by acquiring complementary companies such as CreateMaster, which many of you probably know from the past before becoming Zutec. And then other customers across the building life cycle, companies across the building life cycle. We recently acquired DFM Systems in Ireland as well, who is focused on handover and digital safety files. And we primarily play in the handover, quality and asset management space. We are seen as probably one of the leaders in O&M delivery today through streamlined trades management, dashboard and analytics for our platform, having structured data in that one platform, and then providing comprehensive digital data sets. And we work with over 500 customers, processing thousands of documents, digitizing thousands of buildings, and working with some of the biggest and smallest contractors. So you can see some of those customers on the slide. I'd now like to hand over to James, so I'm going to bring him onto the screen. So thank you, James, and you're going to talk a little bit more about what we're hearing from our customers today.
Great, thanks, Maria. So in account management, I get the benefit of speaking to a wide number of our customers across the UK and Ireland markets. And I think we hear a lot of consistent frustrations and pain points with the handover process. And it kind of boils down to your three classic areas of people, process, tech. So looking at the kind of tech side of things, I think, as we move into a world where there's large amounts of systems and softwares available to support, what we see is that increases the risk of fragmentation, or sometimes tech just hasn't caught up with where the aspiration is. Some of the comments here around potentially using Excel to still manage handover document processes. Whilst it might kind of work, it's not particularly scalable, or sometimes when it is a bit of a disjointed approach from one part of the project lifecycle to another. So CDE is all well and good for managing the build phase, but in terms of handing that information over to an end client is not always the most effective. On process, we kind of hear a lot of feedback around challenges for taking ownership, delays, things being a bit of a kind of last minute rush to get information, and sometimes that information being duplicated, and that then has an impact on people or the relationship. So you can have supply chains that don't necessarily understand or have a clear set of requirements as to what and when they're supposed to deliver, and then when it comes to handing over to the end client, there can be points of friction around the quality of information perceived or otherwise. So kind of hear a wide range of these points of feedback, and Zootech is very focused on hoping to alleviate those. So I think Maria's going to jump in with a quick poll here to get some people.
To get you warmed up, we do have a quick poll for those on the call. We'd be grateful if you could select those that apply from this question. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see with Handover today? So if you can put those areas which you do have challenges with, and we are already seeing some answers coming in. And a lot of you are seeing kind of lack of standardization, poor quality documentation. Actually, it's pretty varied across every stage, lack of skills, misalignment with asset owners, tool fragmentation. So I think from what we're hearing, it seems like a lot of you have the same or similar challenges to what we hear from customers, with lack of standardization and poor quality documentation and unreliable processes probably being some of the biggest challenges that you experience today. So thank you all those that submitted to that. I'll now hand back to James, who can talk a bit more about digital challenges as well.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. And, over the past few years, definitely the kind of 3+ years that I've worked in Zootech's seen a complete changeover to digitization. So, Handover is pretty much digital first now. We do still see the odd, delivery of a huge amount of ring binders having to go over to customers, but that is absolutely the minority. But I think digitization in and of itself doesn't necessarily solve those problems. So we've got a number here aligned with some of the responses in the poll. So I think we see very much that lack of standardization. If there isn't a consistent means or set of expectations given on how handover information will be passed on to the end client, you have that misalignment between contractor and end client. Quality of documentation is obviously key, both in terms of the documents themselves, but also just how complete they are. So is everything being handed over? Often it's not until much later on, once the building is kind of operational, where sometimes it becomes apparent that there's documents missed, and that results in calls back to the contractor, which nobody really wants. From a process point of view, if there isn't that standardization, just in terms of ways of working, it can often result in that late scramble to get documents as PC is fast approaching. There's a bit of a mad rush to get all of that information. And that's not supported by things like fragmented tools, for example. So I touched previously on the idea of, RCD is always going to be the best mechanism for passing documents on to an end client, and that's not always the case. I think when we look at, that feeding into disconnects, for example, so when you're thinking about the kind of construction arm and the operational arm, are they aligned in terms of thinking as to what is required and when it's required? And I think, with the nature of the industry as well, it does support a bit of that, not thinking in kind of full life cycle terms. So I think sometimes the task at hand is obviously the most important and most pressing, and getting the information over sometimes takes front seat and priority above necessarily the quality of the information, how it's going to support the building through its hopefully long operational phase. So, as I say, digitization is a great tool, but it needs to be underpinned by strong ways of working in order for it to be truly successful. And we're seeing kind of times changing, and I think expectations have changed. So, as I said before, we're not just handing binders over to a client anymore, at least in the most case. What that seems to result in is very much an increase in client expectations. So that idea of kind of consistent, accurate very reliable information, documentation and data. But then that also bleeds into what does post-handover support look like if the client wants to pick up on specific points of information. How do they go about doing that? How do you set them up to be as kind of self-serving and self-sufficient as possible? How does that feed into defect resolution so that this can be quickly and easily addressed and worked on collaboratively? So look, digital platforms are more prevalent, and AI is obviously the buzzword, and we will absolutely be touching on it a little bit later in our presentation, but we've got to think about how all of this supports those better interactions and that kind of broader idea of how handover documentation can support a building once it reaches the operational phase. And then the backdrop of this is obviously the regulatory environment. So Building Safety Act has completely changed a lot of handover for obvious reasons. There is that emphasis on high quality information and also breadth of information being captured. And obviously with the regulator around and having the potential to call up buildings to kind of evidence that they have the right information, it's absolutely paramount that it's there during handover or during build and passed on at handover. And then just think about things like sustainability, so BREEAM and the other various certifications are now very much part and parcel of it. So we have to think about a lot here in terms of supporting our customers as to how best to ensure that the process and the handover point is as efficient as it can be. So coming to the title of the webinar, so we very much do think it is time to rethink handover. So it's not just about passing over a set of manuals and supporting documentation. It is a process, and it's a process that very much has to meet client expectations. So that is both in terms of the completeness of the documentation that is handed over, but also thinking about kind of what does that ongoing ease of access, navigability of the information look like? How can we ensure that somebody, a building manager, 5 years down the line is going to easily be able to find a specific certificate or kind of set of manuals for assets within their buildings? That then obviously feeds into kind of reducing inefficiencies, so potentially later on in the building's life cycle, or even during DLP, if there is anything that needs to be resolved, how can both client and contractor quickly arrive at the relevant information and use that to support any conversations or worse remedial works. And then yes, in this digital age, we're very much thinking around how we deliver smarter O&Ms. So thinking them as less of just a library of documentation and more a data set that supports a building and supports that long-term lifecycle management of an asset. And being able to make use of technological advances as and when they come. So AI very much present, but who knows what's that going to look like? And our mindset's very much on being future-proofed and ensuring that everything that we're doing is makes it open and accessible to technological advances as best as we can.
So that leads us on to our next poll. If everyone is happy to put their answers in, and that's how confident are you in your quality of your current digital handover deliverables? And if you're happy to answer this based on what you see today, that would be great. Seeing answers come in, a lot of you very confident, some of you saying occasionally, so it's a bit up and down. On most projects, I guess it depends how you do your handover. It makes a difference as well on how confident you are.
Yeah. I guess the scale of requirement varies as well, project to project, and HRB is obviously going to have a lot more documents required for it, a lot more regulatory documents required. So I think it's probably fair to say that the confidence and quality might vary dependent on the nature of the building and the project itself.
Absolutely. I think most of you saying occasionally, so it probably does that variation piece. So thank you everybody for submitting, and I'll hand back to James again.
Thank you. Look, our view here is that we need to support contractors to move from handing over a set of static documents to delivering what is effectively an underpinning of an AI ecosystem, or even just a set of very navigable documents for a digital platform. But I think AI probably is the end goal at present, at least. So if we move on to the next slide, thank you. So where we view things as best supporting that, and where we work to support our contractor customers is by putting in the foundations and groundwork that allow and enable that. So I think one of the really key things is that, you know, we start early, so that standardization and structure is the kind of most important, the foundational aspect of working together. The earlier we can set expectations, the more confident we can be that we're going to be able to work towards them. Keen as well that we align across the various stakeholders involved. So asset owners, facilities managers, for example, we work very closely with end clients and often hold end client relationships directly in combination with the contractors themselves, just so that we can all be clear on what's expected of one another, set kind of milestones if required, but make sure that we're thinking kind of long term on this rather than just, as I say, kind of quickly collating a set of documents. Taking ownership of data quality is a key one, and I think that sits across everybody who's involved in this. So contractor, end client, us as Zootech as well. Are the documents delivering what they're supposed to? Are they structured and stored in a way that makes them accessible and suitable for the long operational phase of the building? I think that feeds into kind of this idea of handover. It's not just a single fixed point in time, it's this continuous data pipeline, so that you have multiple stages and opportunities to review and you know, kind of amend should required to ensure that you end up with the best quality product. And yeah, I think like one of the things that we think around is how do we think like a product team and not just a project team? So a project team, you've kind of got that one fixed milestone that you're working to deliver towards, and then everybody kind of washes their hands of it at that point. We're thinking about how are we working with our contractor customers to build a great product that they're going to hand over to an end client at the end of the process, and the end client is going to be able to make really strong use of it and it support them in that operational phase. So yeah, I guess the goal from our perspective and where we think we work really effectively with our contractors is this is a value-driven process. It's not just a kind of checkbox exercise on a list of a lot of boxes to check when building a building.
So on to our third poll, and that poll is how much of a priority is delivering AI-ready data at handover for those on the call. It might not be a priority yet, but it's probably something that we probably all need to be starting to think about given where we are. But yeah, it would be good to see some of the answers from those on the call, just to see where people's heads are at around AI at the moment. So yeah, so actually probably as expected, not currently a focus for most of you. Some of you are saying it's a growing priority. Some of you are saying some awareness but limited action. And no one's saying it's a critical priority yet, which is probably the case in most cases. Yeah.
And I think ultimately, you know, if you get in a way, it almost shouldn't be a priority, because the priority is around getting those fundamentals right, so getting really well collated, well structured, standardized sets of documentation. That enables AI, absolutely, but it's not really the end goal. AI is something which is almost like, at this stage at least, a strong supporting mechanism, but in reality it's about getting the handover quality to kind of the highest level, and then that opens a lot of doors afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, James. So thank you for everyone that submitted to that poll. I'm now going to hand over to Carolina, who's going to be doing a bit of a Q&A session with Toby, and Toby's going to be sharing some of his thoughts around handover, how they think about it at Red. So thank you, Toby and Carolina.
Thank you, Maria. Well, Toby, before we dive into some interesting questions I have here for you, can you please tell us a little bit about your role, your involvement in the projects that we have delivered together, and the type of projects that we have delivered together, so for everybody here joining us today?
Sure. Yeah, okay. So I'm technical director for Red Construction. So I oversee, well, all things technical, design, design management, document control, documentation as a whole, so including the creation and submission of the O&Ms. I oversee sustainability and just generally help the business with whatever it needs to be as efficient as possible as a main or principal contractor.
Excellent, thank you. And the type of projects that we have delivered together are mainly residential?
No, most of the jobs we deliver together are predominantly refurbishment or cut and carve type projects, either commercial or hotel, some student accommodation, tiny amount of residential. There's been some care homes as well. So a bit of a mixed bag, really.
Okay, excellent. So jumping to the first question, where do you think things to break down when it comes to delivering O&M documentation today?
Well, there's quite a few reasons, really. I mean, certainly historically, main or principal contractors, the focus, you'd have to say, for the majority of the delivery of a project is on the delivery, is on the build, and the O&M or the documentation side often takes a back seat. So to have a third party involved in that process to help collate a pack of information that meets our contract obligations set by the client is really, really important and beneficial. Everyone is just so busy doing what they're doing on site. So when we don't have that, then things do break down. And it can be a mixture of people not knowing what they're meant to be doing, where things are meant to be stored, what order of information needs to be produced, what are the client's requirements really in terms of how they want to see the handover or record information, and who's doing the reviews to make sure that the information is compliant. So yeah, lots of reasons why things break down, which is why it's really important to have that third party and discussions at an early stage to try and preempt that.
Something that we also spend lots of time, and maybe it's worth mentioning here, is reporting. So there are lots of kind of parts that we have to coordinate, but ultimately it's how we report to you where things are, what the red flags are. How have you found the progress reports that we usually share with your team?
From yourselves?
Yeah,
the reporting side is definitely a good aspect and function of what you guys do. Without that, we wouldn't know. Asking questions of sometimes we get a delayed response, so we don't really know. But with the reporting function that you've got and the use of the dashboards on the platform, you can see there and then what the current status is. So straight away, you can see where the immediate sort of critical items need to be and where things need to be addressed.
Okay, and talking about before SUTEC, have you experienced any risks or consequences for incomplete documentation or handover information?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it all leads down to PC, practical completion. So we've had delays, unfortunately. This is not with Red, but just previous. In my past, I've experienced delays because of insufficient information or lack of structure, if you like, to the O&M folders, that has caused client a bit of angst that has led to us needing to remediate that and delay the receipt of PC.
Yeah. I think that's a common factor when clients come to us and they are trying to solve the same issues. Jumping to the next question, what are the key drivers behind your decision to adopt SUTEC as the platform to deliver your projects?
So we find, well, not just these days, but certainly over the last 10, 15 years, the volume of information that is produced that is needed to go into an O&M set or a record set has grown immensely. The number of designers that are involved on a project has also increased with the level of contractor design, subcontractor design that's now required. So we took the view that, as I mentioned earlier, rather than the project team and individuals in the project team that need to be focusing on the delivery and the closeout side, focusing on this, we wanted to get a third party with a platform, with an infrastructure there that we were able to use easily, with easy functioning and easy access to see where we are. So that was the main reason, as well as also knowing that ZUTEC do provide a good, if you like, chasing process to reach out to consultants, subcontractors, us as well, to provide the necessary information as per the agreed timescale. It doesn't always go according to plan. I know there's always issues with that, but at least the fundamentals are there. So knowing Zootech did that was a reason why we wanted to look at joining forces with you.
Great, thank you. We have done a data migration project recently.
Data migration.
Data migration. So for anyone with this today, well, data migration, basically there is a project, handover documentation exists, and we transfer this handover documentation onto a platform, and we organize everything into specific folders. How was your experience with us, Tori?
Yeah, that was good, really good actually. We had to migrate data from one platform, an O&M platform that wasn't quite working out for whatever reason at the time. The client as well wasn't keen on the platform and the system we were using in terms of end user functionality. So we decided to move across to Zootech. But obviously we had to do it in a very short space of time to minimize the impact that would have on closeout. And actually it went very quickly, and there was very little issues actually when the platform came live, so it's a pretty smooth transition.
Excellent. Yeah, basically I got the same feedback from my team. This was quite very short turnaround. It was very easy and to get closed. What do you before I jump to the next question, I have another one here. So you have moved recently to an enterprise deal with us. What prompted you to change from a project by project process to an enterprise-wide framework?
We've done a number of projects with yourselves. Obviously, as you'd expect, with us learning as well in terms of our project teams learning how to work with you guys, you learning how to work with us. There were teething problems to a certain extent, and that sort of became more smoother further down the line with other projects, but there were still inconsistencies. We didn't have that sort of level of accountability that we wanted in terms of that communication. So we did explore the enterprise agreement with yourselves. Value was obviously a big thing, and that was a key part, and the value certainly, as long as we maintain the number of live projects at any one time, it's a very good commercial deal, if you like. But the service itself, we went for because we knew we would be buying a sort of a gold level service with this. So we would have accountability from top of the business down through to project level, and people to speak to in the event of blockers needing to be unblocked. And we knew that a lot of our client base liked the Zootech platform, and from a sort of FM point of view or post completion, they would be happy with the Zootech platform to potentially take that forward as well. So those are the main reasons why we wanted to explore the enterprise agreement.
Amazing. Okay, when it comes to AI, it's one of the main topics in this webinar. What are your considerations, or what have been your considerations being around data in the long term when it comes to asset management and AI?
Yeah, so we're keen to explore the use of AI as much as possible. Obviously, there's a lot of learning there. We don't know. I don't know fully. We speak to a lot of people about it. Obviously, there's a concern about security and a concern about what it actually means. But obviously, if there is a benefit, and you can see that in other streams, there's a lot of benefit using the likes of AI for reviewing stuff, reviewing wording certainly. So from a manual point of view, yes, I can understand why AI would definitely be beneficial. So yeah, we're definitely up for checking that out if there is an obvious way of using it.
Excellent. One last question. For contractors considering this journey, what advice would you give based on your experience?
I would advise that there needs to be very clear guidelines right at the start in terms of how things are set up. well, first of all, what are the contract requirements? Make sure that everyone is understanding what the client, the end user actually wants in terms of the setup, and then communicating that down the line. Making sure that everybody, both on the contractor side and the Zootech side, understand who's doing what, and then what timescales they're working to. Also that your supply chain as a main contractor are well versed in this, or have an understanding of what's to come. Obviously, the more you use it, the more au fait the supply chain become with that. But all parties involved just need to be clear and make sure orders are placed in a timely manner. If the order's placed within, with a month to go, it's just not going to work. So we need to be getting the earlier packages done and dusted as soon as they've completed, and then just sort of roll on towards completion.
Thank you, Toby, and thank you for sharing your experience with us. Is there anything else that maybe you would like to share with the audience about your experience with Zootech?
Not over and above what I've said. Obviously, we've just entered this enterprise agreement, so keen to ensure that it is doing what we've agreed to, which at the moment is looking like. But yeah, the relationship is very good with yourselves. We've been pleased with the service, and where there have been problems, as I say, you guys have listened, and rectification has occurred. So from that point of view, it's a good working relationship, and we're keen to continue going forward.
Thank you, Toby. Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Carolina. That was really insightful. So thank you for spending the time today, Toby, to go through your thinking and ways of working with you. I am now going to hand over to you, Josh, who is going to provide a quick live demo on the platform for Handover, and we're also going to be sharing a view of our AI solution, building AI, and in terms of what we would hand over to a client if your data goes into our platform. So over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Maria. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see it okay?
It's just coming through. There we are.
Perfect. Right, I've seen on the call list that a lot of you we actually work with, so no doubt would have seen this already. But for the ones that haven't, I'm going to spend sort of 5-10 minutes on our cloud-based digital platform. Effectively, it's a platform to support the project teams to help manage and deliver their O&M information. So, a bit of background and context before I go into some of the tabs. The platform itself is live; it's kept up to date. You've got 24/7 access right the way up to PC. It's an unlimited user model in terms of the amount of data on there, in terms of the amount of licenses that you can have on the project. So you keep it relatively small scale or open up to the wider project team. That's absolutely fine. It's an unlimited model in that sense. With regards to the process of getting the actual information onto the platform, it's done by Zootech, our project team. So the platform itself is read-only. We manage the responsibility of the QA process, so managing the information, coordinating information with your supply chain. But on top of that, uploading the information onto the software. Reasons for that, I suppose, the team here at Zootech are experienced. They do this day in, day out. They know exactly where documents, drawings, folders, certificates need to go, under what folder, under what headline. So in terms of accessibility, it should be a little bit more streamlined. Not only that, we wouldn't want, I'm pretty sure yourself or the end client wouldn't want a subcontractor to be allowed access to the platform. And ultimately, do a bit of a data dump of information when really only 10, 20 documents might be required for the project. So we manage that QA process, if you like. This, in effect, is what you can expect to see. This is what we've taken you to a demo section. This is an average project with us. There's two ways to get from A to B. There's two ways to search for a document here on this landing page. We've got a folder structure, tree structure here on the left that looks most commonly like most CDEs that are used by most project teams that we come across. And then on top of that, we've got sort of Power BI running in the background to give more of an analytical dashboard. So all the reporting tools and functionalities to support progress. And I'll run through a couple of these tabs that a lot of our contracts would typically use, starting with the folder structure here on the left. So what we've got first and foremost is the document register. Does what it says on the tin. This just gives you a long list of every single document included on the project. And with that, along the top, we've got filters. We're able to filter the information based on the metadata tagging that we do to every single document. So what that means is if the project team, the guys on site want access to information documents that currently sit with them, you can go to the review status, look at information that's currently sat with yourself, items that are at final, not received, and so on. On top of that, if you need information filtered on a per sub-project basis, so if you're doing a commercial build, multi-use, or a resi project with multiple blocks and you want to split the information on a per block basis, we can align that within the folders on Zootech. In terms of how it's documented and delivered, to align with recommended best practice, like I mentioned, we'll deliver the information on a per sub-project basis. So if I just open that up, give it 2 secs, give you an idea of what it looks like. This is the typical structure that we would adhere to. So this is how the information is documented during construction, and come exporting the information following PC, this is what you can expect to see in this folder structure. So a run through this is a bit of a table of contents, if you like. So we've got a CDM compliant health and safety file. We break the O&Ms down into your fabric packages. So if I give you an example of what that looks like for cladding, for instance, you've got your O&Ms, design, health and safety information, product, general, maintenance, and so on. This is then replicated for every single fabric package. The reason why we do this and have this structure, it enables you, the project team, and the asset owner, when it comes to managing this information, accessing this information, to be done so that bit more easily, just because the content is replicated throughout the packages. Underneath fabrics, we've got your services. So we break the information on a per system type, system basis, a mechanical, electrical, lifts. General building information. So typically this is where your EPC certs or PC certs are stored here. And then any additional deliverables above and beyond sort of standard O&Ms and health and safety, resi manuals, logbooks, all of which we would author on your behalf. Then we come into our sort of interactive dashboards. I'm just going to close the screen down very quickly. So like I mentioned before, the content of that information on the tree structure is then filtered into this sort of analytical dashboard. Like I said, the information within it is exactly the same. It's replicated, but a lot of our clients find something a little bit more interactive, more user-friendly with the digital dashboard display that you've got here. Everything that you come across is filterable. So, if you want access to what's been complete by company, by a package, we have a look at the ventilation company used as an example for interest. So we can scroll onto that. If we filter the information to the bottom half of the dashboard, we can see exactly what's outstanding for that particular ventilation company. On top of that, we've got a global search. So this is where, again, mentioned about adding the metadata to the documents to make it more easily searchable and easier to navigate. If you wanted access to anything within cladding that's been titled cladding within the document, by clicking in cladding, it will filter the information onto the bottom half of the dashboard. In terms of managing this information on a project basis, we've got like an actions required tab. Essentially, this is where information is held, progress, and where there's any escalations that we need the project team to look at. So on the top, section 1, packages, escalations required. This is where we've gone through our chasing, typically in line with the construction program submitted by the contractors at the start of the project. We've got hold of, or we're trying to get hold of a particular subcontractor. We haven't got a response, there's no answers. We've tried X amount of times. Effectively would name and shame them. We'd put them onto the platform there for you to see who we are trying to contact, but who are effectively sort of playing ball, if you like. There might be an element of risk, holding up or slowing down the project. This is when we'd then escalate that. And on top of that, where information is currently sitting. So if information's been reviewed, passed over to the project team for more of a technical review, and it's been sat there for longer than 30 days, we're sharing that with yourself to say, listen, can you get on top of this? Can you review the information so we can then progress the package? More for the same, we've got information that hasn't been received when the overdue date's been plus 30 days, and when information's been returned to the subcontractor more than 5 times. So effectively, this is just a tool, the actions required to see where we need to escalate and where information is currently sat. On top of that, we then break the information down on a per providers tab and a document type tab basis. The two look pretty similar. and what they sort of represent. The providers just gives you a list of every single subcontractor within your supply chain. So for instance, we could see the ventilation company, we'll use them again as an example. We could see that they're due to submit 55 documents for this project, of which 29 are outstanding. So again, you can use that filters tab and it will draw that information down to the bottom left-hand side of the page there. So you can really filter through the information that we've currently got, what's expected and what's outstanding. And then lastly, conscious that, you know, when you come to hand this information over to sort of your client, anyone sat FM side, they might not be familiar with the supply chain used by the contractors. This is where we would sort of steer them towards the document type tab. So effectively, we're just we're setting out, separating the information on a per document type basis. So here you've got a complete list of all your certs, your drawings, descriptions, and so on. What some of our contractors use this page for, if they want access to a particular drawing for, you know, site-wide and external information, they could use the filters tab on the left. So if we said site-wide and external, we're looking at a particular package here. So we'll go with electrical, and document types we're looking at for the drawings. Again, use this tab to filter the information on a more granular basis to plug that information. So typically, we work towards your PC date, but we also keep this information live and updated 4 weeks post PC for any late submissions, any as-built that come in after that period. What we are going to touch on now is something that we've recently developed and have currently rolled out to a number of projects that have been hosted with us, or currently being hosted with us, is our new AI chatbot. Bear me 2 seconds while it loads. I'm going to get onto the right page here. Hopefully you can see that okay. So yeah, so we've developed a chatbot which effectively sits on top of your asset information, which enables the asset owner to access reliable, building-specific information. So the chatbot is engineered really to assist with locating information within your project documentation, with the results sort of depending on the quality of the data, so the quality of the input, the information that's gone in. So if we use an example, a question here, so you can ask it holistic questions about systems, operational questions, or just to locate a specific document. What it's currently doing now is scanning all the documents and reading the document names, sort of identifying what's been included within the manuals, identifying what's missing, and on top of that, it will list the citations of where to find the information. Sometimes it can take sort of up to 20 seconds or so to do so. So the question here, describe the ventilation system. So we've got the components, the features, descriptions, and controls as well. On top of that, we've got where the information can be referenced, the citations that go alongside that. So this just identifies the information where it can be located, and we give you the option to download if needs be and share that on with a particular sort of client or trades separately. If, for instance, we could use another example, you want to extract information, maybe a specific deliverable that needs regular updating. So maybe like a building logbook. You could just type it, where can I find my logbook? Again, it's going to go into the O&Ms, it's going to scan every single bit of data relevant to that question, open up the document type, reading the information. It gives about 10, 20 seconds for it to do so, and then it should plug the information, all being well. Yeah, so within that, we've got a link directly to the logbook. So if you open that section up, chuck us to a new tab, and that's where you can download, export the information, make any sort of adjustments to that particular deliverable. We could use this as an example of the logbook. Let's see it.
Thank you, Josh. That was great to see the platform in working and also see some of the kind of building AI elements that we have. So when you have your data or your O&M manuals in our platform, that's what your client would get as part of hosting with us. If they were to host going forward, they'd be able to not just see their folder structure and their documents, but also search for it pretty easily just by asking it questions and getting those instant answers going through that. We do have another poll, so poll 4, before we move on to kind of wrapping up the session. You know, some of you may have thought about this already, some may not, but what is the biggest barrier to delivering AI-ready data handover, and select all that apply? And there's probably quite a few areas. I think some of it's lack of standardization, poor quality documentation, skills gap in that supply chain, having tool fragmentation, lack of client demand, maybe clients don't even realize they need it yet, and time and cost pressures. So if you can click the ones that apply to you. Again, I think it's probably fairly obvious, but that poor documentation probably wouldn't lead to kind of IA ready data going forward, probably time and cost pressures as well. When we're delivering a building manual, the last thing you're thinking probably about is AI at the time, but probably more about thinking about what you are handing over to your client. And then finally, lack of standardization is coming up key. So to wrap up, Josh, do you want to talk through the kind of key takeaways from today, and then we'll go over to questions. And if anybody does have any questions on the session today, please put them forward on the Q&A chat bot or chat messaging button at the bottom. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, so Handover is no longer an endpoint, it's a data foundation. Zutec support a digital first early stage approach to handover, so allowing contractors to capture asset data, documentation and compliance as construction progresses, rather than rushing towards the back end of the project or sort of close out, you know, last couple of months. Why this matters for AI? AI effectively requires complete, consistent data sets. Late stage data scrambles leads to, you know, gaps, duplication and poor structure. And probably lastly, continuously capturing structured data creates, you know, reliable data pipeline AI can actually trust. AI is only as good as the data you deliver. The quality of your data directly determines the quality of your AI outcome. So structured data unlocks AI-driven querying, automation and insight generation, while unstructured documents fundamentally limit what AI can actually deliver. So, I mean, Zutec is positioned to transform traditional handover outputs. So, you know, the likes of PDFs, folders, spreadsheets into something more structured, searchable, and effectively a connected asset data. So this includes asset registers, PPMs, standardizing templates and manuals, linked documents, certificates, and compliance records, and clearly defined sort of data ownerships, right, with a robust validation process. Closing the gap between construction and operations. So contractors have a responsibility to deliver data what FM and asset owner teams can generally act on. Long-term value is created by delivering asset data which is aligned with the FM and asset owner requirements, where the information is readily accessible, queryable, reusable, and where it can support maintenance, defect management, safety and compliance really from day one. Contractors who get this right will lead the market. Yeah, I mean, structured asset data and smarter processes aren't just operational improvements, they're a competitive advantage. So contractors who invest in getting this right will see less rework, faster review cycles, fewer defects, and lower aftercare costs. Most importantly, they'll deliver a better end client experience, right? Setting themselves apart in really an increasingly demanding market.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh. So one last poll and then we'll go over to questions. Lots of polls today. So what best describes your organisation's priority for improving handover in the next 12 months? If you can select the one that probably applies to you, that would be great. And I will have a look at kind of answers. some of you saying looking to replace an existing system. Some of you saying rolling out new enterprise-wide processes in the future. Those are the two core ones that are coming in actually. So yeah, some of you are going to be looking at how you look at your handover and explore options over the next 12 months. And I think, you know, we are in a digital savvy world now and AI is everywhere. So I think having some of that as part of that, your consideration is key to what you kind of hand over and having that data structure right. I'm now going to move over to questions. If you do have questions, please feel free to add them to the Q&A button or the chat bot and we can answer them as we go. We do have a couple of questions that have come in already. So I think the first one probably for you, James, around kind of the data migration piece. Does our platform work if we are managing the O&M data, if we're not managing the own data, but just migrating data over? And I think you probably covered some of that off, Toby and Caroline.
Yeah, I think Caroline and Toby covered that in their Q&A session, but I mean, the simple answer is yes, right? So even if Zootech weren't directly involved in collating the information, we still have our project team available to help structure existing asset information or building information, and you know, bring it as close to the kind of standardized structure, and as a result benefit from all of the kind of platform attributes that Josh went through. So I think yes, obviously there are a large amount of buildings that were built a long time ago as well. So we get a real kind of range of recently built ones where either the contractors kind of collated their own O&Ms or used another third party, all the way through to long-standing buildings where you know there's kind of the scanning of the physical copies of documents, digitizing those and putting them in. Great, thank you, James. And we've had another question come in. What support do you expect from clients to ensure a robust and accurate data set? Maybe one for Carolina, actually, on the delivery side.
What support we expect from clients?
Yes, to ensure a robust and accurate set of data.
I think Toby mentioned it before, when it comes to understanding what we are doing and who is responsible of doing what. When it comes to support from clients, we have different type of projects. If we have something like data migration, we need information as soon as possible so we can review, we can do a gap analysis, we can process, and we can deliver as expected time. When it comes to new projects, we always need support when it comes to trade contractors. Some trade contractors might not understand our service, might not deliver information in a timely manner. So we will need that kind of support, reinforcing what we need to do to make sure that we are on time. But also, when it comes to live projects, new projects, it's important that we review documentation pretty quickly. Some of the issues that we have and rushing towards the end of the project is that we have not prioritized the revision of the documentation. And it's understandable because they are focused on getting the job done. They want to construct, they want to make PC day. But what we don't want is that the actual content of the manuals, the actual status of AB drawings, commissioning certificates, doesn't get reviewed. We want to make sure that that has been reviewed and that we all have peace in mind that when the end user takes over, that information is not going to have any pushback. So that's the type of support that we always need from our clients.
Great, thank you, Carolina. And one for you, Josh, that's come in. We've talked about today a lot of challenges that potentially come in from the supply chain. How do we ensure that our subcontractors are actually delivering information at the right time? I guess there's a process to that, and Carolina, you touched on some of that then.
Yeah, so at project kickoff, so this is typically when our sort of project team will meet with the site team, we would ask for a construction program and a directory. So we'd use those two core pieces of information to set placeholders on the platform of who we should be expecting information from and when. So as long as that's kept up to date, if any sort of changes, any movements are made with the program, it's shared with the project team. We've got an idea of who's on site and who effectively will be chasing for O&M information.
Great, thank you, Josh. And another one for you, I guess, you touched on it during your demo around, where clients can see the data, but, how do we make sure that the end client has a view of that documentation in the build stage? I guess when they've got building AI, they can see it all and they've got access, but it's probably slightly different during that construction process.
Yeah, I mean, during construction, what we would always encourage is involvement with anyone sat client side, consultant team and employees agent. What we often see within client ERs and prelims is sort of visibility over the information, sort of sign off, typically the last couple of weeks prior to PC. What we would encourage is sort of their involvement during the construction phase as and when packages are progressed. So we work towards a 3-stage review process. So ultimately, first review is done by Zootech offline, checking the completeness of information. It then gets shared with the construction team for more of a technical review. We then encourage a third and final step for the information to then be shared with anyone sat client side to review the information. And this is done on a per package basis, incrementally throughout the construction program.
Great, thank you, Josh. And then one final one that was coming for you, James. Can AI identify missing documents before practical completion?
Quite a broad question.
Yes.
Kind of a bit of a fudge answer. I guess yes and no is the answer to that. So I think we'd always lean on first working closely with both contractor, subcontractors, end client as well, to set out, as Josh said, kind of what that construction schedule looks like and what's expected from which party at what point. And as that information is kind of filtered through to the Zootech team, we're then able to support in what is effective gap analysis. So as Josh was going through the demo, you can see going into the individual packages or suppliers, where information was missing or had been received. So I think that strong kind of data foundation addresses that to an extent. Where AI can fit in is, it knows what's there and what's not there, right? So it is very much able, if you ask it a question, what does my, fire system or something look like for block A, units X to Y or something along those lines. Like if that information simply isn't there in the data set, the AI will come back and will say, this information isn't here, it is available for these various bits. So it is quite good at kind of knowing what's there and what's not. What the AI, I guess, doesn't do is it won't do it at scale. So you won't be able to say, give me a full gap analysis of where I'm missing systems information for packages X, Y, and Z. So I think using the two of them together, both having that strong standardization of structure and then kind of layering AI on top is going to be able to best support you to understand where information is or is not.
Great, thank you, James. That is the final question that's come in. I would just like to say, if there is questions that you want to pose offline, please do so. You can reach out to your account team, or you can simply reply to any of the emails you've received about the webinar. We can put you in touch with the right person. I'd like to sincerely thank Toby for joining us today and being part of the session. That was really insightful, so thank you for being part of it. I'd also like to thank James, Josh and Carolina for your insight and expertise and going through that, and thank all of you that have joined today. I'd now like to close the call, so thank you, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.